sure all of your cell phones are off, not vibrating, silent, type of, yeah, I know, I checked mine first. So I'm good, I'm good. The presentation total should be 20 minutes, including questions and answers. I'm sure if we run a little over, there will not be a problem. This room is open afterwards. So if you feel like grilling a presenter after, totally fine. Okay. And your faculty advisor is sitting in the back. Dr. Hiller, would you like to wave to everybody? Here's Dr. Hiller. All right. Let's hear about tigers, John.
Okay, so hello everybody. Thanks for showing up this afternoon. That's the last presentation for the day. So I'm Shiva, and my capstone research project was on the review of methods used to estimate and monitor tiger populations. So to start things off, many people know that tiger is the largest member of the cat family, and it is the third largest land carnivore. And there were 9 species of tigers overall. 3 have already gone extinct. One species, which is the South China tiger, is virtually extinct in the wild. The 5 that remain are either endangered or critically endangered. There's estimated to be only 3,200 tigers left in the wild, which is a 97% decline since the 1970s. Tigers also used to have a range from Turkey in the west to Russia in the east, but now they have also lost 93% of their habitat in the past 100 years. So with all these problems, why do we need to protect tigers? Why are they so important? Well, for one of the reasons is tigers are apex predators, and as apex predators, as you can see, they do not have any predators of their own. They are at the very top of the food chain. So as the apex predator, they play an important role in maintaining the health of the ecosystem, either by controlling the prey population or limiting inter-prey competition. Tigers are also a keystone species, which means that any decisions that are taken to conserve tigers or protect them indirectly helps to protect other species that are found in the same habitat. So, and just another reason is just because they're simply awesome. They are wild, they are perfect killing machines. And how many people watched Life of Pi just to see the tiger? Yeah. So given all the hardships that the tiger population is going through, they might be extinct pretty soon. So there are many conservation efforts that are being taken to conserve them. But there are some challenges when it comes to tracking and monitoring them. Well, for one, tigers are forest dwellers, and they are really good at doing it. They are extremely stealthy, like this guy right here. They are solitary animals. They like to hunt by themselves. And because of their decreased numbers, they are also very rare and thinly distributed. So all these factors combined make it pretty tough for anybody who wants to monitor or estimate their numbers. So the aim of my research was to review the various methods that are available out there and being utilized to monitor tigers, and then evaluate the methods based on their criteria and choose a few that I feel are best suited for our current time. So the methods with which I went through my research was to go through primary literature, and I did it in 2 steps. The step 1 was to gather information on tracking and monitoring in general, so I went through many different methods that I could find. And step 2 was to look at 5 different methods that I think were the best to monitor and estimate them. So the 5 that I chose were camera trapping, non-invasive genetic sampling, track survey, predicting tiger density from prey abundance, and radio tracking. So moving on to the first method, which is camera trapping. So camera trapping is currently the most widely used and accepted method. It involves the use of remotely activated cameras, which are equipped with infrared trail sensors. This method is particularly effective for tigers because they can be individually identified based on their stripe patterns, like people can be identified based on their thumbprints. And it's also an efficient, non-intrusive method in many field conditions where you do not have to come into direct contact with the tiger to do this method. And this method also requires a minimal workforce, as all you need is one person to fix and monitor all the cameras. So how does camera trapping work actually? So camera traps usually consist of 1 or 2 units which are triggered by infrared trail monitors. Once the camera is triggered by a tiger, it takes a close-up photograph of the animal's flank on color film. The purpose of capturing the flank actually is because it gives a clearer target and also a clearer image of the stripes, so that in turn makes it easier for identification, for easier and more accurate identification of the tiger. So the data that is usually collected with camera traps are analyzed with statistical software such as Capture. Capture is a software that computes estimates of abundance in capture probability. So camera traps have been proven to yield higher density estimates compared to more traditional survey methods such as track surveys. So in the top picture you can see a researcher setting up a camera trap in a rainforest in Malaysia. And the below picture shows a family that has been captured. As you can see, the cameras are set to capture the flank, so it's easier to identify based on the stripes. And the date and time is also captured in order for record keeping and analysis. So there are some drawbacks to this method. So as you can see, in order for the survey to be valid, you would need a large number of traps and a long trapping period. Both these conditions increase the cost of this method. So in the long run, it could be expensive when you take into consideration that the equipment is vulnerable to theft, vandalism, and damage by the animals. And it is also to be noted that cubs under 12 months of age are rarely captured in camera traps, so it must be taken into consideration when statistical analysis are made on the tiger abundance. So the second method that I chose was non-invasive genetic sampling. So this method is currently becoming an increasingly popular option to capture-recapture sampling. So this method involves the genetic typing of DNA, which is extracted from the hair or scat sample of tigers. So this method is a particularly valuable resource in Russia and Southeast Asia, where tiger densities are naturally low occurring. So how does genetic sampling work? Tiger hair is usually collected from snare stations which are baited with scent lures. So where tigers get attracted to the smell, they come and rub their bodies on it, and hair falls out in the process, and biologists collect the hair. Scat, however, is collected along transect routes and latrine sites with the help of scat detecting dogs. The sample that is collected is then sent to a lab where the DNA is extracted and sequenced to identify target microsatellite loci, which aids individual tiger identification from unique allelic signatures. So you can see the picture on the left. Scat samples being collected in India and hair samples being collected from a scent post. So the drawbacks to this method are obviously the high cost involved with analyzing sample in the lab, with the equipment, expensive equipment like they have in Dr. Hamel's lab. It also involves highly trained workforce who are trained in lab work as well. Another thing that needs to be taken into consideration is that genetic material breaks down rapidly and has to be taken into consideration when the sample is being transported from deep within the jungle to the lab for analysis. Another drawback to this method is something called the shadow effect. A shadow effect means a tiger that is captured is believed to be recaptured again because its DNA profile is a shadow of a previously captured tiger. So what I'm trying to say is, if closely related tigers are being captured, it is almost difficult to tell the difference between the DNA profile, so they might just consider them to be the same tiger. So must be taken into consideration when abundance estimates are being made. Third method, which is also the most popular method, is track survey. So track surveys are the oldest method used to monitor and estimate tigers. It involves the manual counting of tracks in the wild. It is also the most efficient and rapid, and is also very cheap. All you have to do is just go out and look for tracks. So how does it work? In Russia, actually, they're used in two main different countries, which is Russia and India, in two very different ways. In Russia, they use paw prints in the snow, where the biologists compare recorded track sizes and distance between track sets with data on tiger travel distances to identify individual tigers, and they use track counts along fixed routes to make a full census. So they do the same, they go along the same routes every couple of years to manually count the number of tigers based on the paw prints. In India, however, they have a different technique where they trace pug marks in dirt. The traced pug marks are then photographed, and the distances and angles between the features of the pad are measured and analyzed using statistical procedures such as Euclidean distances. They do this so that each pug mark can be identified individually to a specific tiger by identifying the individual traits of the paw print, if you guys get what I mean. So this is just paw prints in the snow and pug marks in the dirt that they record for analysis. So the drawbacks to this method is obviously it requires a lot of people to cover vast area for them to get a full survey. And also a too wet or dry substrate can invalidate the survey, and if the soil is too wet, the paw print can disappear, or if it's too dry, it might not imprint. Also, variability to differing substrates such as sand or mud, and slopes and lighting conditions when pictures are taken can actually interfere with the actual shape of the paw print. So the last method that I would like to talk about today is predicting tide density from prey abundance. So the theory, the idea behind this method is that if you could identify a small number of limiting resources for a species of interest, in this case the species of interest being the tiger, and if you can identify the limiting resources, which would in this case be the prey species, and if you could estimate the densities of the prey, then we could actually use the estimates of the prey to predict the density of the tigers. So this is a very interesting theory, as it is easier to estimate the prey than the tiger itself. I mean, it's much easier to spot a cow than it's to spot a tiger outside. So what biologists usually do is they look at the prey such as somebody and mooncheck and look at the estimates to determine the tiger estimation. So how does this method work? So it has been estimated from previous studies on big cats that tigers annually remove 10% of all available prey in their habitat. And the same studies show they have an average kill rate of 50 ungulates per year. So when you combine both these numbers with the estimates of the prey in their habitat, statistical models can then be made to estimate the tiger densities. So these are some of the tiger's most favorite food, somebody and mooncheck. So the drawbacks to this method is, one of it is the development of functional relationships between species and their resources are much more difficult in practice than they are in theory, because tigers eat different stuff in different habitats. This tiger in Indian rainforest might eat different food than one in Russia. So the development of the relationship is pretty difficult to establish. And the other drawback is the density estimates of the prey have to be pretty accurate in order for the tiger population to be accurate. So in summary, what I would like to say that there is not an end-all be-all method when it comes to monitoring and estimating tigers. Each method has its own pros and cons, and the preferred method would, one, depend on the goal of the study. If it is to identify individual tigers, then one of the methods would be to use genetic sampling, where you could identify individual tigers pretty accurately. Or if you would want to, the aim of the study is to estimate abundance, camera trapping or track surveys would be a more suited method for that goal. And another criteria that would depend on is how you would want to spend your funds on it. If you have very limited funds, then obviously you want to go out and do track surveys, you spend very little money on it. If you have a lot more money, maybe you do genetic sampling as it costs a bit more, and also have a mixture of methods as it could yield more better and more accurate results. Here are some of the select references I have for the research. Thank you very much for listening. Does anybody have any questions?
Besides the challenges, besides like the forest dweller and like prey and everything, what do like humans, like what are the challenges from humans to the tigers or whatnot? I'm trying to say. Like, is there like in the black market, like I don't know what it's called, like trapping, or they use their skins as
Oh
pelts
yeah,
and
that's
stuff?
definitely one of the reasons why they are
Yeah.
very rare is because they are poached like hell.
Yeah,
It's like their parts are used mainly for medicine. So that's one of the reasons the South China tiger is extinct in the wild, because nothing is safe in China. No animal is safe in China. Especially since tigers are used extensively in Chinese medicine. It's after the South China tiger is gone, Chinese are encroaching Malaysia, Thailand, slowly wiping out all the other tigers for their medicinal purposes. That's definitely one of the challenges when it comes to, that's one of the reasons they're very rare.
And then another question, how or what ways are they trying to keep them off the endangered species list or from going extinct?
Well, there are many, the reason, in order for the conservation efforts to be successful, they need accurate numbers of where the population currently stands. That's one of the main problems they're having in conserving tigers, is because they have a very hard time of monitoring how many tigers they have and where they are. So which was the purpose of my research actually, to identify which are the effective methods to track and monitor, because once you are able to track and monitor them, then you know their numbers, you're capable of answering the management questions necessary to conserving and increasing their numbers.
Do you think that maybe doing some kind of aerial survey would benefit? Because I mean, if the poachers are finding them, then they're out there.
Because the only time I've ever heard of an aerial survey was the one done in Russia. They did an aerial survey in Russia, but it has been proven a bit unreliable because it can be very expensive.
Right.
It's an expensive method, and they are very rare. Because you could be flying for hours and you could barely see them.
Well, in Malaysia, it's really
Yeah,
bush, so you
and
can't. Yeah, I suppose
yeah,
you probably
it's
could
the only place they could do it in Russia is because it's not thick forest cover as well. In other areas, it's really thick forest cover. And you could spend, like many people, you spend many years in the forest and you never see a single tiger. They might be watching you, you don't see them once.
Right.
Yes.
And then why are the cubs under 12 months not like captured or recorded?
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting question. From the papers I've read, they do not know why, or it was just that I didn't read deep enough into it. I'm sorry, I don't think I could answer that. Or maybe it's just the mom is overprotective of the cub. They stay within the, then for the first year of their life, maybe that could be the reason. I was just assuming.
So, some of the methods, like the tracking methods and the camera methods, is that relying on, and do tigers actually have specific paths that they follow? Like, are there sort of routes that tigers use to move from
Okay, so
place to
camera
place?
traps are usually set up along forest trails.
Okay.
Forest trails and forest edges where the tiger sightings are most common. Okay, so to increase the probability of capturing tigers. And camera traps are also, what they do is they can set the traps to only operate at a certain time of the day, because tigers are known to come around in the early hours of the morning, 4, 5, 6 to 7. So they set the time. And also the traps, usually some of them set the traps to trigger of only animals above a predetermined size.
Which
So-
is maybe why the ones under 12 months aren't captured.
Yeah, that could be it. Thanks.
Sure. Come on ahead.
That answers your question.
Awesome. And my other question is, so with very small populations, this yes, the shadow effect. The problem is if you have a more and more inbred population, it's going to become
closely
harder
related.
and harder to tell them apart.
Apart from each other.
So has the genome been sequenced? Do you know? Could they actually look for more signatures of individuality of the tigers?
No, I haven't.
I teach genetics. This is
Yeah.
that's totally an unfair question.
I'm pretty bad in genetics, so I didn't go too deep into it.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I have one last question. And then, you said that China uses tigers for medicine. I was just wondering, like, what medicine they use them for, and like, is there any other solution they could do instead of using tigers? I guess.
Well, that's an interesting question. I guess a lot of people are trying to stop the Chinese from using tigers and other endangered animals for their medication. Like, I know WWF is trying really hard. But it's education. Maybe trying to educate the people about the importance. I think Life of Pi did a great deal in raising awareness on tigers. WWF is using the movie in their campaigns now. So maybe just showing how magnificent they are, that we do not actually own this planet, we share it with other animals. Yeah. I believe tigers deserve to be on this planet. They're just awesome like that. So do every other.
Of course, there's
So does everything else.
whatever.
Okay.
No, you're good.